Thanks for tuning in to another show in the Next Reel family of film podcasts.
Want to skip those ads and get early access?
Become a member at truestory.fm/join and discover all the other great perks that come with it.
I'm Pete Wright.
And I'm Andy Nelson.
Welcome to the Next Reel. When the movie ends,
our conversation begins.
To live is over. It's good to be poor. Nothing like it. Kind of sums up the gestalt of this movie, writ large.
Communism.
Communism.
Am I right?
Wow. This movie, when did you watch it? You just watched it this weekend?
I just watched it. I had seen it back when it came out at one of those, on the campus, they would have those like international screenings that would come through and play in one of the auditoriums. I saw it there.
Sure.
I had forgotten I had seen it until the hospital scene toward the end, and everything came back to me. I'm like, I absolutely remember this sequence. Yeah.
Yeah, it's fascinating. It's a fascinating exploration over time of this family and their relationship with China, the ruling parties of China. And as we go through the Cultural Revolution toward communism, it's crazy. It feels like an epic. And maybe I think it would have felt like an epic to me had I seen it originally when it came out when I was a younger man. Now, these jumps, 10 years to 10 years to 10 years across the arc of this thing felt like flashes of change that were explosive and deeply unsettling. I was very moved by this movie. I foolishly, I wanted to start with playing our old game that we used to play quite often. What does Andy think Pete thought of this movie? And I've already spoiled it.
You have.
Thought it was, I thought it was pretty incredible.
It's a powerful film, and it's interesting because this came, I think it's Zhang's 5th film, and it came at a point where he had already kind of proven himself with some pretty brilliant films as far as style and color and the way that he kind of crafted images, like with Judo, which we've talked about on the show, Raise the Red Lantern, which we've talked about on the show. Even if you look at like Red Sorghum, I think the only film, the film that is between those films, which all really push their color palettes, and this is The Story of Qiu, which I think is probably more along this line. So we've definitely shifted with Yimou's filmmaking style into something that's a little more, I guess I would say, aiming for naturalistic looks as opposed to how he started. And certainly, as we've also talked about, when he shifts back into his wuxia films, like with Hero and House of Flying Daggers. And so I think that this is a period where he's trying something different. And it really strikes me how powerfully he can still craft a story when he's not really aiming on the different colors to emphasize different things. Like, this is just a very naturalistic film, but the characters are so well crafted, and like you said, we're getting this epic tale of kind of a country over 4 decades of change, as we see it all through a very small window of specifically like one family, and kind of how all of these changes affect them over time. It's great. I love it.
I came in expecting a Zhang Yimou film, right? I expected to Raise the Red Lantern. I expected a lot more bright red, frankly. I expected higher contrast. And so, when I expect the stylist, Zhang Yimou, and I get the storyteller, I am jarred by it. And I'm legitimately not sure if it's my preference for the stylist or if that's just habit, that I'm just used to seeing those interpretations of filmic storytelling from him. And this was just outside of that experience. It felt, at first it felt bland, and then I realized, I think, what was happening after we get the fall of our principal character to his gambling addiction. I realized, oh, this is a just straight up different kind of story. And I sort of had to settle in. It's also not a short film. It takes its time to tell us the story over those 4 decades. I thought it was pretty dark until I read about the book and realized that Zhang made some concessions to make this actually damn near uplifting at the end compared to the book. Do you have any experience with the book yourself?
I don't. I actually didn't even look to check and see. Did you find, has this book been translated? Is it available in English?
I don't know. What I read was a review of it, and who talking about how it looks like it has. Michael Berry has an English translation that is referred to as a foundational text in American University Chinese literature courses. So there you go. The story of the book ends with just our principal character surviving. Everybody else dies, and so it attempts to make good on the active choice of the film's title, To Live, right? To make that sort of moral expository choice. And it's very, very powerful. Instead, in the film, we get something that's a little bit more uplifting of characters learning to live, but a few of them living together.
Yeah, right. We get a few more at least. It's an interesting element of this story is watching the ups and downs of the family, the happy moments, the sad moments. We're seeing so much of both sides of life. And I think that's actually a really interesting element of the story that we see throughout is the way that Yimou pivots the script and makes it so, like, we have some really heavy, awful moments that hit throughout the course of the story, but it never really lingers on it too much. Like, we kind of move past it like life does, and people just have to move on and figure out how to kind of continue moving forward. And
because we have to get ready for the next horrible thing to happen. There's not time.
There's another horrible thing right around the corner.
Andy, there's a doctor who dies from eating dumplings in this movie. It does not get worse than that.
He doesn't die. It's just awful that he has a stomach full of cement, basically. Yeah, we definitely get a lot of those sorts of elements throughout. And I think that's part of the premise of the whole conceit of the story is like letting us experience the ups and downs of this family's life as they are experiencing them in a very particular window of time. Like, we're starting before when who's it, Chiang Kai-shek, who is in charge of China, and then Mao Zedong came in with all the communists, and like, we get the wars, we get those scenes, although we never actually see war scenes, but we certainly see armies as our protagonist and his puppeteer buddy are conscripted and sent
to
off
the revolutionaries.
To the revolutionaries, right? Well, they're on one side, and then they end up getting drafted to be on the communist side of things. Luckily, honestly, it plays well for them just because of the puppets. And actually, I want to talk for a few minutes about the puppets, because we talked about how Zhang really emphasized the naturalist tone of this whole film. But one of the things that he did add to the story that's not in the book is the puppets. And that is such an interesting thematic visual element to throw in to allow us to have these more kind of magical stories kind of up on the screen of these figures and these beheadings and people kissing and like conflicts between relationships and all of these different things that are going on in the puppets that in some ways are kind of reflective of what's going on in life. But it's such a kind of a dreamy way to craft that and include that in the story. And I thought that was actually a really interesting element. Of all of it, feels the most like Zhang Yimou and his style. Like, that felt to me like this is where he's kind of inserting the instead of like the crazy colors and the beautiful schemes that he's creating, he's putting it all into the puppets. Did you feel that at all?
Oh man, I think the puppets are the way to watch this movie, right? Like, I think following the puppets and not just the puppets are representative, as you said, of the interpretation of life. On the one hand, it's also, right, I mean, if you start from the beginning of the film and map the puppets across time, it starts with a gift from Long Er, the guy who took everything from
Right.
Fugui, right?
What
Took
a nice
everything.
guy.
Yeah, right. And ends up in a give a man a fish moment, right? Teach him to fish, saying, "Hey, here's the puppets. Go earn a living," right? And he does. It becomes his livelihood for the Civil War. So the puppets become a gift of, we'll say, a certain kind of wealth. They allow him to survive. It's forced empty during the Cultural Revolution, right? When the puppets get burned, it becomes a thing of fear, and criticism is stamped out at around every corner. So the puppets are feared and hated. And by the end, the puppet trunk holds new life, right? The puppet trunk holds chicks that the grandson has now sort of taken on. It becomes a coop where one kind of wealth used to exist, this livelihood of Fengui. Now we have a new kind of wealth in the form of this kind of new life and a new start. And I think that, that the puppets give this movie its entire emotional history. And I think that was incredibly powerful. I was surprised to hear that Zhang had added it. And, I think there's a lot of criticism of this film, positive and negative, because it is a very popular film to be taught. And I think one of the main criticisms is that the metaphor of the puppets is too tidy, right? That it's too teaching.
Really, that's the complaint.
That's the complaint, right? It's too preachy.
Interesting. Yeah.
Of a metaphor that the symbols of the puppets and what the specific puppets represent as kind of the royalty and the et cetera, that it undermines the realism of what the family is going through. And I could not disagree with that more. Let me just say that. I think that's lunacy. I think the puppets are, again, the emotional thread of the entire movie. Everything just sort of balances on who Fengui is related to his experience with his livelihood, and that's the puppets. It's incredible. I think it's really, really artfully told.
Yeah, it's such a fantastic element added to the story, and it just speaks to the visual element of the medium. And I think adding that really speaks to Yimou recognizing that he still needed a way to kind of like touch the film in some way that made it feel like perhaps more of a Zhang Yimou film, right? We're getting instead of the beautiful reds that we're seeing throughout Raise the Red Lantern or something like that, we're getting these puppets that are so representative and everything.
Well, and so much fire, right? I mean, fire is both the symbol that brings puppets to life as backlit theater and also the thing that serves as such a destructive mechanism in this film, in the period. It destroys the puppets, sure. It also destroys his house. It destroys everything. And so it's an interesting use of the symbol. I think puppets bring that to life.
Yeah, for sure. How does the sense of fate, destiny, luck, those elements do you feel like those are playing into the story in some capacity? We certainly have a lucky moment, I guess you could say. One, he starts as a gambler. He's very unlucky, as it turns out. And he's also really foolish in that he kind of continues gambling, betting essentially all that he has and this, as we find out, is Longer's scheme to get him to basically bet so much money that the only thing that he can do is give Longer his mansion. And again, it leaves the family in utter ruin. Already at this point, his wife had left him with his pregnant wife, we'll say, had left him with their daughter and the son to be. And he ends up living with his mother. His father dies in fury at the fact that his son has gone and done all this. And then his wife finally comes back to him when she hears that he's no longer gambling and that he's kind of cleaned himself up and everything. And then the communists come into power. When they do, it's the landlords that they go after, and Longer, because he lives in this mansion, and apparently because also he didn't want to give them the house or something like that, he is executed. So there's an interesting bit of luck and fate. I mean, do you feel like that's playing into this story much beyond kind of there, or do we see it kind of continuing?
Well, I don't know, man. I feel like the beginning of this movie, this first act of and the first sort of generation as his family is torn apart and they come back together, it felt like I wasn't sure what kind of movie I should be watching for. Is this was this Zhang Yimou's like recovery from gambling addiction in the 1940s story? It was not that. It actually it allows us to move on from that pretty quickly after the after that turn, after the communists sort of enter the picture. And so if we're going to look at an expression of luck, it feels like the rest of the movie is an expression of bad luck, right?
Well, luck and fate. I think some of it also is fate.
Right. The fact that his buddy during the when they were traipsing around the revolution doing their puppets ends up being the guy who backs the car into the wall that kills his son.
The school wall kills his son.
The school wall, right. So and I think it's, you know, you look at the interpretation of food in this movie. This food is really important to this movie, right? So the dumplings, there's probably nothing to this. So I'm going to say it and you're going to say, Pete, you're insane. There's nothing to this connection. The dumpling, Yongking has the dumplings, right, that he takes to school the day he's killed. He never opens those dumplings, right? And then Jiazhen leaves dumplings on his grave for years, right? The fact that he was not able to eat is converted into a ritual. Feng Shui buys dumplings, again, these wheat buns, to give the doctor to deliver Feng Xia. And the doctor eats them too fast. His stomach, as we talked about, distends and he becomes
comatose,
incoherent.
Much, yeah.
And then Feng Xia dies because the food meant to save her killed her caretaker, right? You know, then we actually named the grandson Little Buns, right? After the buns that failed to save his mother. It's like that is an arc of cruelty that is just sort of printed here without comment. And I find that so fascinating that this sort of arc of dumplings is made from something so fractious to the family is made something hopeful in the end. It is given all this sort of fate has led to this grandson becoming named the thing that has killed two people before him. And then, of course, you know, the chicks at the end are future food. Like, they're adorable, but everybody knows where they're going to end up.
Yeah, right.
So I don't know that when you look, I think food and fate in this movie are intertwined, right? And it's not that food is bad. It's that, like, simple human sustenance can be turned into engines of suffering by political power and all of that. Like, the reason the doctor is sick is because of the Cultural Revolution that is destroying the fabric of intellectualism and education in the country at the time. And all of those things are intertwined. I think that's fascinating. Does it make any sense?
There's definitely something to it. I'd have to really kind of think about it and pick at it some more. But I mean, you think about when, I can't remember what Mao Zedong called it, but the Great Rising or whatever it was of the country in the
Great Leap Forward.
The Great Leap Forward in the 60s, where they literally collect all the steel and metal from like every single family so that they can melt it down and turn it into cannonballs and bullets and things that they can use in the actual battles. I think at this particular time they were fighting against Taiwan. And
still messing with Taiwan, by the way. Just a footnote of history. Still dealing with that.
Still dealing with it. Yep, I know.
Still dealing with
just in the news, right? So that's an interesting element because they have to give away their woks and their utensils and their, you know, she even says, what are we supposed to cook with? And that's when
you don't need to. That's the beauty. We're going to eat together.
We have the community kitchen now. Everybody will eat together. And then we have the scene in the kitchen, and this is the point where the son, he's been getting bullied. Well, these bullies have been picking on his sister. He's tried beating them up, but he's too little. So he takes his giant bowl of noodles that he has them fill to the brim. He pours as much chili sauce as he can into it, and then he proceeds to dump it on the bully's head and gets all the chili sauces in his eye and everything. So there's an example of then food being used as a weapon. And
Yeah.
so there is an interesting element of how food, and in this particular community, I know food was, I don't know, the way that it's depicted in the film, they never hungered. That was never a problem. But the Great Leap Forward was a big problem, and it was one of the things that kind of led to Mao's downfall, is because one, they collected all this metal and smelted it down into this stuff that they couldn't actually use for anything. It was like completely useless. So they ended up with these giant lumps of smelted metal all around China that just were completely basically left as a symbol in the community, is that, yeah, that's what we think of you actually getting to use your utensils and woks and everything to actually eat. So that's one. And two, it became this point where people started starving. There ended up being, I don't know the number, but thousands and thousands of people around China were dying because of these community kitchens in these communities that just didn't have enough food to actually feed the entire communities. And that became a serious problem in the country. And so I think there's probably more to your point than even we recognize as Americans who aren't as familiar with the entire rich history of everything going on in China at the time. But for people in China seeing all of this stuff, they thought about a lot of those points.
Yeah, right. That is that's a really good disclosure we should have made at the beginning. Like, let's not forget the eyes through which we are watching this movie. This is a very layered film, and certainly not a student of Chinese history more than just sort of superficially. So there's a lot going on.
Yeah, I think so. Well, let's take a quick break, but first you can find the show on YouTube, and you can join us live when we record. We will even take your questions in the post-show chit-chat, and members get the full post-show conversation and always know what to listen to next. Subscribe to The Next Reel on YouTube. The link to this episode is in the show notes. We'll be right back.
You know what the Next Reel family of film shows actually is? It's not just shows you keep up with. It's a place you come back to.
The Next Reel's film-by-film conversations, CinemaScope's deep dives into movements and genres, the film board on whatever's in theaters, Movies We Like's craft conversations, Sitting in the Dark's horror breakdowns. It's all here, waiting.
If that sounds like how you already spend your time browsing, discovering, going back to something you bookmarked months ago, consider becoming a member.
For $5 a month or $55 a year, you get early ad-free access to all 5 shows a full week before they go public, plus exclusive bonus content that doesn't live anywhere else.
Think of it as your library card. Head to truestory.fm/join. That's TRUSTORY.fm/join. And sign up today.
The Next Reel family of film shows. The conversation is already here. Come find your next film.
Can we just take a beat to talk about a couple of performances? And
yeah, please.
Some of the arcs here. I want to talk about Fugui. This is Ge Yu, cast as Fugui. Apparently, he was a comic actor before he took this. This is his comedian takes serious role venture.
His second, because he he had just been in Farewell My Concubine, directed by Chen Kaige.
Right.
And that's my understanding, and I think I'm correct here, is that Zhang Yimou had seen that, or he had heard from Chen that, hey, this guy is great, and ended up wanting to cast him in this film. So,
wow. So he's a Robin Williams in What Dreams May Come.
Yeah, think of all these. Robin Williams starts in comedy. Tom Hanks starts in comedy. Jim Carrey starts in comedy. Like, so many of these great actors start in comedy, and they move into the dramatic roles. Even Will Ferrell. I mean, he's had his turns several times.
Yeah, I think what he was able to do here was pretty extraordinary and deeply convincing, right? That he moves from this young, ridiculous, impetuous gambler to middle-aged, frightened, sober, naming his kid Don't Gamble, I thought was a brilliant comic turn. To this elderly survivor model, which I think he charted, this single performance charted the entire arc of humanity, of his humanity so beautifully. Yeah, the fact that he gets to have his moment at the gravesite at the end where he doesn't lean political, even as his entire history has been battling how he leans politically. I thought that was just lovely.
And still, like, in many ways blames himself for problems that have come. Yeah, no, it's powerful. And I mean, obviously, people thought he was great. He was nervous about his performance and wasn't sure he did a good job. Went to the Cannes Film Festival, kind of dragged to the Cannes Film Festival because he didn't want to go. He was embarrassed. And he wins Best Actor at Cannes. So people recognized that this was an incredible performance. I mean, it's so heartfelt and honest, and it's so easy to just get pulled in by everything that he's doing. And so, yeah, I really, really enjoyed his performance throughout the film.
The other central performance, Gong Li as Jiazhen, this was, I think, was this her third or fourth Zhang Yimou film? She is, it's maybe too easy to call her restrained in this performance, but she is a stoic. And I think she too gives us this, 30, 40 years of time physically, vocally. She tracks through incredible illness and chronic pain and grief and forgiveness. I mean, her grief arc is extraordinary. The loss of her son, her confrontations with the buddy, what was his name? Chun Sheng. When she stops and tells him, "You owe my family a life." And then when he comes back and says, "I'm going to take my own," she says, "You have to live. You still owe us a life." As an arc of forgiveness, I was deeply moved by that sequence. And that's all on her. That's incredible.
Well, and I mean, it's Gong Li, and I was wrong. It's her fifth. She's been in every one of his films up to this point. So, fantastic performer. I mean, I've always enjoyed Gong Li. Not as much when she's acting in the films over here. We talked about that in our Hannibal episode. Or no, it wasn't Hannibal. It was what's the prequel called? Young Hannibal. I can't even remember what it's called. It was so bad. Anyway, Hannibal Rising.
No, we've had problems with Hannibal Rising.
So bad.
Problematic.
Anyway, she's fantastic, and I think that she actually she and Gayo both play the aging over 40 years like really well. There's not a ton of age makeup, just little hints of it, but I bought it. I bought that these people were kind of living and growing and dealing with changes in their lives over time. And you said it, as far as her story and her change arc over the course of it, as she's dealing with all the tragedy and the deaths of her children and the anger that she has against Chun Sheng and the eventual forgiveness that she finds for him and how hard it is to get to that place for her. And it's like the fact that he is now also suffering greatly, and he's been accused of being a capitalist, and his wife has killed himself. Like, all these horrible things are going on in his own life, and that's the point where he wants to kill himself, and she says that to him. But after, I will point out, she opens the door to him and says, "Please come in, have something to drink," which she has never done. And so it was powerful to watch her kind of get to that place where she's learning and growing and understanding that everybody is going through their own story and everybody suffers, and he's been carrying a lot of burden himself all of these decades because of his accident when he crashed into the wall and killed their son. So, I mean, it's been a hard life for him too.
For sure. There's an interesting arc in this film, and I just want to plant a seed for it because I know that this is something director Zhang has done before, but we're about to talk about a little mini trilogy here as we add more of these films to the series, and this movie represents the start of the sort of constrained woman narrative, the trapped woman narrative in these films, and she has the sort of emotional and strategic intelligence about their family that the men around her just sort of lack. And the same thing we get with Mei in Daggers and Xiaowai in Shadow. All three of them have this sort of intelligence that the men around them are not able to understand or rationalize. And I think that'll be an interesting thing to see how it reflects in the coming episodes, because they're also over decades of filmmaking from Zhang Yimou. So I was fascinated by that, especially in Shadow.
Well, and you see that. I mean, look at Raise the Red Lantern. Look at Judo. Like, look at these other earlier films that we've discussed of his. It's definitely a thread that he enjoys weaving into his stories of these strong women trapped in kind of the realities of the world in which they live. I think it will be an interesting thing to kind of discuss and think about for sure. One other actor I wanted to bring up who I just absolutely loved was Jiang Wu, who plays their son-in-law, Wan Erxi. He ends up being brought over in this kind of marriage by convenience because their daughter has been mute since she got sick as a child and is hard of hearing. And he is somebody who has had an accident at a plant and has, because of that, is crippled in one leg and kind of walks with a limp. And so the townspeople think that they will be perfect for each other. And he comes into her life, and
for first thought, best thought.
Yeah, right. I know exactly. Well, it's communism, Pete. This is just, but it's very much an arranged marriage, and this is how they're doing things. But I love the moment when they're doing their work and some of their friends come over and say, "Hey, we just saw Erxi and his friends. Like, they were at your house. They were throwing tiles off the roof. Looked like they were kind of destroying the place or something." And they kind of like, what's going on? And they kind of panic. This is like right after the first meeting. And they think that this guy is like gone crazy or something. So they go over to their house and they find out that he has decided, hey, I'm going to bring all my buddies. We're going to fix your roof. We're going to retile everything and get everything cleaned up for you. And when they walk in, they're painting this giant mural of Mao on the wall in their house. And I mean, yeah, this is the period where like all the art in the house, everything is Mao related. Everything is about celebrating the greatness of China. And I just thought that was the funniest way to kind of introduce this fact that he does completely fall for her and they have this beautiful relationship. And as a son-in-law, I just loved this actor and the way that he played it. It was such a beautiful addition to the family to have this guy who is so caring, obviously very deeply connected to his communist work and everything that he was doing. Like, because I think he's a leader of the Red Guards. And so he's just very into it. Like their whole wedding ceremony and everything is very, very communist themed, I guess we'll say. But it plays so well as far as a welcome addition to the family that they, I don't know, it seemed to be something that they really genuinely needed and their daughter genuinely needed.
It's so interesting because his performance is complex, right? Because Red Guard was the movement, mostly the youth movement, right, during the Cultural Revolution of this period, that was encouraged by Mao to attack the institutions as bourgeois and counter-revolutionary and old culture and all of that, right? They drove the campaigns against teachers and intellectuals and doctors and officials. And so here he is, Erxi, member of the Red Guard, falls in love with this woman who is then has to go give birth, and his own sort of identity is what caused them not to have an educated doctor at his wife's bedside to help her survive her hemorrhaging, right? That is deeply sad. And I don't think I don't know, check me if you had a different read on this. I don't think he had an awareness that it was his people's activities that led there to be only young student nurses in the hospital when his wife needed a doctor. I don't think he ever made that connection beyond the immediacy of we need one doctor here, and once we get that doctor to help his wife, we can get rid of him again. Do you? I mean, did you have a different read on that?
Well, that's actually interesting because I don't know if the film or Zhang in the way that he crafted that side of the story, I don't know if he reaches so, or I don't know if he paints Erxi so much as a character who has done these sorts of things. Like we know that he's a leader of the Red Guard, but we never actively see him doing any of this sort of stuff. All we really see him doing is hanging out with the family and being part of them and hanging out with his coworkers, and everything is very jovial and very connected.
True.
The only people that are really painted that way are the actual nurses at the hospital. So if the Red Guard was doing this sort of thing, the film kind of leaves that to the side. And I wonder if that's an issue that they don't really show that too much, because we get a sense that the nurses who are the students who are at the bedside helping, they're the ones who are like, oh no, we're taking care of this. Those doctors, we got rid of them because they're preaching all sorts of nonsense and we know what we're doing. Meanwhile, they don't. And Erxi, well, now I can't remember if it's Erxi or his father-in-law, Fugui, who says we need to get the doctor. But Erxi is, yeah, it's Fugui, right? But Erxi is totally like, yes, let's go do it, and he's the one who goes and gets him. So I don't know. Is that a problem that the film puts him in the position of being a Red Guard, but doesn't actively have him being one of the people who's pulling down all the educated people?
Yeah. Who is that for, right? Because we know that director Zhang has said, like, a lot of these sharp corners, these sharp criticisms of the party were softened because he wanted it to get past the censors, and the film was banned anyway in China, right? It's not like he lost.
Not really
either
for
way.
those reasons, but yeah,
right,
yeah,
right. Not
yeah.
for those reasons.
We'll talk about that for sure.
Right, but the truth is, many of the sort of incisive criticisms of the film also center on the fact that these choices appeared to be made to soften characters for a Western sort of idealized audience too, to make the film more palatable for a Western audience. And the film goes on to be deeply appreciated by Western audiences. And so I think there is something to that we're not getting, that this character is representative of a movement that we have reason to be deeply critical of as human beings. And the movie softens those edges in the form of this character, which I think is a fascinating character. To give him this identity, it's almost like just a unrealized opportunity to show his real complexity. But also, this is workaday China, right? This is workaday China in this era, and they're just living with the decisions others have made for them. And that too is part of the movie's aesthetic.
Yeah, it's interesting in that we are left with a story that I think it works for Chinese audiences. I think in the end, the way that I heard about it is that largely the film was banned specifically because when the distributor submitted it to Cannes and it was accepted at Cannes, they didn't go to the censors first, and the censors were just pissed. They were like, "Sorry, that you should have known better. We're gonna ban your film." It sounds like that's the only reason that they banned it. It doesn't sound like anything in the film. I mean, people have speculated, they were offended by this, they were offended by that. This was all, I got this from the one of the special features is an interview with Tony Raines, who's kind of an expert in Japanese cinema, and he's talking about all this, and he's met with Zhang a number of times, and it sounds like it is either his perspective or Zhang's perspective that's the reason it was banned. Nothing in the film was required to be cut, and that could be because some of it was softened, but I mean, I didn't think anything seemed that offensive when I was watching it. Like, ooh, this is something that's going to really piss off the Reds, you know?
Yeah, I think it's amazing that it's banned because they didn't fill out their TPS reports or whatever. But I also think that point explicitly goes to Zhang's efforts to soften those edges, right? Like, so much of the book is interpreted as being censor-worthy had it been interpreted more directly. And that part of the criticism is the story deserved a more critical assessment of some of the sharper edges of this era, especially the Cultural Revolution, which was so problematic, so damaging.
But it's interesting because the book wasn't banned, right?
Right.
So that's interesting that it's in how you interpret what the book is talking about and everything that could be something that pushes it to be banned or not. But it sounds like it's good enough to not be like it can be interpreted in a fair way. It's like getting past the censors during the Hays Code, right? You look at it a certain way, and yeah, a train going into a tunnel can be read in completely different ways than when you tell the censors, "Oh no, they're on a trip. The train is just going through the tunnel. What do you want us to show?" Right? And so you can get past the censors, and I'm sure a lot of it plays that way.
I do have a note here that says that was the primary reason, was they were offended that they submitted to Cannes without getting government approval, but also they were critical of the critical portrayal of the Great Leap Forward and the Cultural Revolution. And third, bad timing, that this film followed Chen Kaige's Farewell My Concubine and The Blue Kite, which had already alarmed the Bureau, and they were just watching for number 3. And they ended up getting piled on. And then he was banned from filmmaking for 2 years.
Right. And this film was banned until Zhang worked on the opening ceremonies for the Beijing Olympics in 2008. So this film was like locked out for a full 14 years before they finally pulled the ban. So it's fascinating how they reacted.
And let's just say the Beijing opening ceremonies were extraordinary.
Oh, they were great. They were really beautiful.
I mean,
yeah.
Do you remember any other opening ceremonies? I don't. Just that one.
I remember Sydney's. Sydney's and Beijing's are the two that really stood out to me.
Man. And then London. They showed up for tea.
Oh, man.
Okay. What else do you want to talk about?
I think that's about it. It's a beautifully strong film. I thought that he did such a great job with it. So, yeah, I guess that's it. So we will be right back. But first, let's take a quick break.
The Next Reel is a production of True Story FM, engineering by Andy Nelson, music by Tsabutan, Sam Lux, Oriel Novella, and Eli Catlin. Andy usually finds all the stats for the awards and numbers at the-numbers.com, boxofficemojo.com, imdb.com, and wikipedia.org. Find the show and the full archive at truestory.fm. You can follow us from there too. Plus, you can find out how to become a member and go further with every episode. Check out our merch store at thenextreel.com/merch. And if your app allows ratings and reviews, please consider doing that for our show. Okay, I guess. I mean, is there a sequel in the works? Do we get the next 40 years?
To live even longer. No, there has not been a sequel to this, but when you look at the actual book, the source material that Yu Hua had written, that it has been adapted several other times. This film is a very popular one. And then there was a TV series, 33 episode TV series of the film of the book that was called Fugui, broadcast on Chinese television in 2005. And then there was a stage play as well. And so having a sequel would be a weird thing, but absolutely, I think it reflects how popular this story is to Chinese audiences.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like its roots.
Yeah, right. Yeah. It's one of those things that really, people want to watch.
All right. How to do at awards season. Beyond Cannes, I guess.
Well, we'll certainly still talk about Cannes. It had 7 wins with 8 other nominations. At the BAFTAs, it won Best Film Not in the English Language. At the Cannes Film Festival, it won the Grand Jury Prize, tying with Burnt by the Sun. As we already mentioned, Guy Yu was nominated and won for Best Actor. It won the Prize of the Ecumenical Jury, which is an award I guess they give out to films like humanitarian sorts of stories. And it was nominated for the Palme d'Or, but lost to Pulp Fiction.
Okay. All right. I'm sorry. Can we just have a moment and just talk about even having a conversation where this movie is in the same bucket as Pulp Fiction?
Yeah. That's interesting, right?
That is interesting.
And where would you go with your vote? I mean, it's tricky because Pulp Fiction is obviously such at the time when it came out, 1994, was such a huge mark on cinema and storytelling and everything.
Yeah.
And so, but Clint Eastwood, I think, who was the head of the Cannes jury this particular year, said this film was his actual favorite film of the year. So I can't see Clint Eastwood liking Pulp Fiction, actually, now that I say that. So I guess I'm not surprised.
Yeah, right. You're saying what? The Iwo Jima guy didn't like Pulp Fiction?
That gimp scene did it for me.
Oh, I like that. I like that we've got a little Clint on the show.
Oh, all right. And then the Golden Kite Awards. It's a fairly prestigious award over in China. It's fan and industry voted, focusing on Chinese language cinema, celebrating excellence in film. It was nominated for Best Film, but lost to Vive l'Amour. Gay Yu again won Best Lead Actor, tying with Si Hung Lung in Eat, Drink, Man, Woman, another fantastic film that came out the same year. Gong Li was nominated for Best Lead Actress, but lost to a tie between Veronica Yip in Red Rose, White Rose, and Kui Mei Yang in Vive l'Amour, and it did win the Fapresky Prize. So, I think it's one of these things that did well for itself. I was surprised to see that it wasn't even nominated for an Oscar for Best, at this time, Best Foreign Language Film. Of the nominees, I certainly think this one would have been worthy. It would have been an excellent entry.
But see, this is why it's so hard to even think about that, because so much my headcanon says there's a lot of politics going on, and somebody has a thumb on what gets submitted, what gets nominated, what gets talked about in international competitions at this point. I am really surprised at that too, and it just something feels off.
Well, Burnt by the Sun, which it tied with at Cannes, won the Oscar this year for Best International Film. I'm trying to remember what the other nominees were, but like as I think about them, I feel like there were some that I me and my awards watching. I've been trying to watch all of the Best Picture nominees and Best Foreign Language, Best International Film nominees. And this particular year, Eat, Drink, Man... Oh, you know why? Well, no, Eat, Drink, Man, Woman was submitted by Taiwan, so it wasn't China. I'm sure it was just because the country has to submit it. I'm sure China was just a little pissy.
Right.
That's what it boils down to, yeah.
Yeah. It feels pissy.
Ugh.
And we have a comment that feels important to this conversation. Brian in the chat room says, Eastwood liked Pulp Fiction. I think he said the jury all loved it and they watched it after a few duds.
So maybe it was just refreshing. Finally, a movie.
Yeah. Okay. Well, then now we get to talk about the box office, because I know you were able to get so much detail.
Yeah, this is going to be a tricky series. I could not find any budget info for Yimou's To Live. This debuted, as we said, at Cannes, May 18th, 1994, that opened here in the States November 18th, 1994, opposite Star Trek Generations, Leon the Professional, Miracle on 34th Street, Junior, and The Swan Princess. It was a very busy Thanksgiving week. I couldn't find anything as to how it fared internationally, though I'm sure its ban in China probably affected it a little bit. Here in the States, it earned $2.3 million, or just under $5 million in today's dollars. But that is all I have.
Bummer, man.
Yeah.
What a sad segment this is going to be for the next 3 weeks. Just a whole lot of nothing.
We'll see. Hopefully House of Flying Daggers will give me some. We'll see.
Yeah.
I don't have much hope for Shadow because that's entering Netflix territory. I guess we'll see.
Oh, nuts. You're right.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
no. Well, you can't win. All right. Well, I'm really glad we watched this again. As a mixed bag for Yimou, Zhang Yimou, I think this is such a beautiful, heart-wrenching film that I'm really glad we got this on the list. It was a great first watch, and glad to have it in the catalog.
Yeah, and I think it was interesting to read. You had mentioned the book that this was based on is something that is taught a lot in schools. So is the film. Like, this film is used a lot in classes to give people a sense of Chinese history. And so I think it speaks a lot to the strength in how the film was portrayed and how it depicts these kind of like pivotal years as China transitioned and shifted into where they are today. But I think why it makes it so strong is because of the family connection that we have. It's such a beautiful, touching story. And I absolutely think if you haven't watched it yet and we haven't spoiled it enough for you, I think it's worth giving your time to.
Is it spoilable, really? It's not spoilable.
There are some things that, yeah.
You got to watch it.
People should watch it.
You got to watch it. All right.
Yeah. All right, well, that is it for our conversation about To Live. Next week, we are staying in the Zhang Yimou series, but making a significant leap up onto the bamboo, perhaps. From the intimate naturalism of this film to one of the most visually extravagant wuxia films ever made. We are talking about House of Flying Daggers from 2004 with Zhang Ziyi and Takeshi Kaneshiro in a tale of love, betrayal, and rebellion set in the declining Tang Dynasty. It is a completely different Yimou and a fascinating one to put in conversation with what we have watched today. And now, let's do our ratings.
Letterboxd.com/thenextreel. That's where you can find the HQ page for this very show and see the reviews and ratings for all the movies we talk about across the Next Reel family of film shows. And gosh, Andy, what are you going to do?
I have been torn on this one. Is it 4.5? I think I'm going to go with 4.5. It's something that really struck me and just beautifully put together. I love the characters. That's where I am.
Where's that half star fall? I'm asking, like, not sarcastically. I'm really curious because I feel like we haven't had a lot of criticism for the film.
No, you're right. But I don't know. Like, sometimes a film starts at 5 and moves down. Sometimes the film starts at 2.5 and moves around. I just feel like it got up to 4.5. Maybe it's just because it's a film that I just don't feel like I'm going to put on all the time. I don't know.
Yeah. Because for me, no half stars. So I'm going to land at 4 and a heart. And the reason is all internal stuff. Like, I think it probably is a 5-star film, and I was expecting a different Zhang Yimou. And I think I prefer the Zhang Yimou that is more stylistically bold and maybe even a little bit absurd. So, and this movie was a hard and exhausting watch, as beautiful as it is. I don't think I'm going to come back to it often, and I love it. And those things I have to be able to hold in my head at the same time.
Yeah. I think that's the reality of trying to, put numbers on how you feel about a movie. So, 100%. Well, that averages out to 4.25, which rounds up to 4.5 and a heart. You can find the show on Letterboxd at The Next Reel. You can find me there at Soda Creek Film and Pete at Pete Wright. So what did you think about To Live? We would love to hear your thoughts. Hop into the Show Talk channel over in our Discord community where we will be talking about the movie this week.
When the movie ends,
our conversation begins.
Letterboxd giveth, Andrew.
As Letterboxd always doeth.
All right, what'd you do? High, low, in between?
I went high.
Okay.
5 stars by found on YouTube. Apparently they don't use hearts. It's just 5 stars. And they also say 10 out of 10. So they really liked this one.
Wow.
They don't call him the master of colors for nothing. Zhang Yimou has the ability to make a boring color like gray look magical. There's a lot of popping colors in this movie, and Zhang's ability at coloring is enough to make Dario Argento and Wong Kar-wai jealous. Aside from the coloring, this film is effing fantastic. It shows the hardships that China went through to get where it is today as a potential superpower. To Live shows the struggles of a Chinese family living in a rapidly changing China and their intense optimism that gets them through their struggles. It is one of the happiest and saddest films ever made. This will only make sense if you've watched the film. I picked that one because it's interesting that this person focused so much on the colors that Zhang Yimou used throughout the film, and we talked a lot about how it doesn't strike us as colorful as the other films that Zhang has used. But I think there is an interesting point in how making a boring color like gray look magical. Because I will say, there's like the scene in the snow with the military Like that actually struck me as a very Zhang Yimou sort of tone of just seeing everything kind of blanketed in this soft gray white snow everywhere. And so I wonder if there's more to it that we're not really pulling as far as the way that colors played throughout the film in more subtle ways, but still strong Yimou sorts of ways.
Which is fair, although I think, it's in contrast to the films I came in expecting, it is bland by comparison.
Yeah, I get that.
Which is an unfair treatment to the film in isolation, and I absolutely understand that. And it is still a beautiful film, but it is subdued in not just color treatment, but camera move, camera use, framing. It is all much more of a stoic interpretation of filmmaking language than any of his other films. That even Raise the Red Lantern or Judo, right, which are also not the most of a flamboyant Zhang Yimou era. This one is maybe the most subdued.
Yeah. But speaking of camera move, it's interesting because certainly framing has always been important for Zhang. And I did think it was interesting that the very first frame of the film is a shot of the street, kind of like it's just a nice off-angle shot going down the row. We see a few people kind of walking down the street. We have the exact shot in the very last section of the film as Dad is walking home with the grandson at that particular time. And so it's nice to see that he's still thinking about these sorts of things and having those mirror images that play prominently throughout the film.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
All right. Well, mine is from Kimchi Deluxe. It is a 5-star and a heart. I just present this because it involves a Korean saying that I feel like you're going to have to do some mental gymnastics to make it a truth.
Oh, okay.
And I like it. There's a saying I grew up hearing, and then there's a whole bunch of Korean, of Hangul. What you waste today is the tomorrow that someone who died yesterday wanted. What you hate at the present time is something you can't go back to in the future. This sums up the movie well.
What you waste today is the tomorrow that someone who died yesterday wanted. What you hate at the present time is something you can't go back to in the future. Wow.
All right, let that sink in.
There's a lot.
There's so much going on. Yeah. In terms of aphorisms, like maybe we could use a tightening pass.
I don't know. I kind of like it as is. I think it works really well.
Yeah. Oh, me too. No, I'm in favor. I'm a fan.
Wow. Good poll.
I think tomorrow I'm going to call you and I'm going to say, tell me what that thing was that you were supposed to remember. And I wonder what I'm going to get. In the spirit of, telephone tag. What are we going to get?
Well, what you do is you call me tomorrow and you say, what was it yesterday that you hated, but you're now never going to be able to go back to? How did you waste it?
Yeah, right. That's good.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's more of a test.
Yeah. Right.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks, Letterboxd.